Awesome. So if you are ready to go, we can kick off the case.
Yeah, sure. I'm ready.
All right. So today we are going to Paris, and our client is Opera de Paris. And you have been hired by the programming division, which manages a broad range of events. Our client is facing a future where government funding may be dropping, and they need to improve profits from other areas of the business to maintain current funding levels. The CEO of our opera believes that there may be an opportunity to improve the way they run programming, which includes free public events, conferences, festivals, etc. How would you begin to approach this scenario?
Okay, so let me just do a quick recap to make sure that I've got everything. So our client is Opera de Paris, and it's basically concerned with the programming division, which conducts a broad range of events. And recently, the government funding has been going down, and so the opera is looking to increase its profits from the other areas of business. The CEO wants to improve the programming business, such as free public events and other things. So we have been asked to analyze the situation and come up with ideas. Okay, so let me just ask a few clarifying questions. So I want to understand, I didn't get actually what are the other areas of business. For example, what is the business model of this opera, and what are the events do they actually conduct?
So in terms of the events that they conduct, again, it was, free public events, conferences, festivals, actual ticketed events. It is a opera with multiple venues. And so they'll have tickets that they sell to constituents that can come and see the shows that are playing, if that helps.
Okay. So my next question is is there any specific goal of profitability that we want to achieve? And if yes, then under what time frame?
So we don't necessarily have an exact time frame or a specific goal, but we are looking at different ways of increasing profitability overall.
Okay. And so I think right now I have what I need. Maybe some questions will come up in the course of the case.
Okay.
So would you mind if I take a couple of minutes to structure my thoughts?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
In a time of record high inflation and low returns for the S&P 500, you need to diversify your portfolio with an alternative asset class that performs well during times of high inflation. The solution? Masterworks, the platform for investing in contemporary blue-chip art by renowned artists including Picasso, Banksy, and Warhol. Did you know that 2/3 of the world's billionaires allocate 10 to 30% of their portfolios to art? And now, for the first time, ordinary investors like you and I can do the same by purchasing fractional shares in world-renowned art. Over the last 26 years, contemporary art prices have outperformed the total return of the S&P 500 by 164%. Are you ready to diversify your portfolio? Click the link in the video description below to skip the waitlist and start investing today.
Okay, so I have come up with a structure. So let me just upfront admit that I do not have much idea about this opera industry. So maybe I learn more about this while the case progresses. But yeah, I'll try to update my understanding as the case progresses. So I have actually 4 buckets that I want to look into. First is the opera market. The second would be our client, which is Opera de Paris. The third would be the financial metrics. And fourth would be the revenue growth opportunities. So under the opera market, I want to know that how many operas are there in Paris, and what share of the market do they have? What is their popularity level? I want to do some benchmarking with regards to the revenues and cost of our competitors. And I want to know the differentiating factors of our client compared to our competitors, Is there anything that we are doing differently, and something regarding that? And also, I'd like to know the latest trends in the opera market industry. For example, there is something going on which we need to be aware of. Some external changes have taken place, some changes in customer preferences that has affected the revenues, all these kind of things. Under the client, I'd like to know about the business model. For example, how does it do with partnerships with artists, musicians? How frequently does it conduct the events? And what type of people are they looking to target? For example, the customer segments. Are we looking at high income customers, middle income customers? Is there any specific target of the customer that we want to bring in? And how many theaters do we have in Paris? What is their sitting capacity? How many shows do we conduct in a month? All these kind of things. The third structure is the financials. So under financials, I want to look at first thing is revenues. So what is our revenue over the past 3 years? Is that growing up or down the trends? So what are the costs that we incur along with the cost trends? Fixed cost, variable costs. So under fixed cost, we can have like maintenance fees of our theaters, the advertising costs, the marketing costs, all this kind of things. And under the variable cost, how much do we pay our artists? So that can be one thing. And the fourth area that I want to look into is the growth opportunities. So in growth opportunities, I want to know like what segments can we target of the customer that we haven't previously targeted. How can we expand our theaters? Can we go beyond Paris, or do we want to stay in Paris? If we want to stay in Paris, is there any scope for expansion? Also, can we do a new marketing campaign, advertisement campaign to increase our popularity among the people? And also, what can we do in terms of ticket sales, merchandise sales, and any other kind of promotional activities that we can do to actually improve our revenues? This is the structure, and overall, like since you have mentioned that the costs, the government funding has been going down, so I just want to understand the financials, that what are the revenues and how they have been dropping, and what is the like reduction in government revenues that is responsible for the government funding that is responsible for the declining revenues, so that I can come up with an analysis.
Okay, so just to be clear before we move forward, we're not necessarily counting government funding in terms of our revenues. The revenues would be the money that we generate ourselves. The government funding is almost subsidizing if we have extra. And so that's why we're just looking in the future where, because of the overall cut in the arts programs and such, we're worried that we are going to need to sustain ourselves, which is why we want to get ahead of it. So just to be clear, for context before we move forward, for you.
Okay.
Yeah, but I have some information for you on the revenue decline. It's declined about 10% in the last 5 years.
Okay. Okay, so it has declined by 10% of the 5 years. So do we have any absolute figure, what was the initial level and what it has declined to, or can we work with this?
I think as of right now, we can work with this information.
Okay. So, so is there any information on, I want to understand like why the revenue has dropped. So in order to fully understand this, I want to know about the things that are happening. For example, is there a decline in public like interest? Is the attendance of the concerts or the events going down? Do we have some data on this, and anything that relates this to the other competitors that we have? For example, the growth of our client is going down at the expense of some of our competitors. So any data regarding that?
So we don't have any information in terms of our competitors, and they're not necessarily our concern, because this is less about competition and more about making sure we're able to sustain ourselves, given this new, potential funding drop. But in terms of, ticket sales, we actually have seen an increase in ticket volume over that same time period.
Okay. So, I guess that if the ticket volume is increasing and assuming that the price remains constant, so I'm assuming that the revenue is not the problem in this equation.
Well, revenues have been declining. And I told you that volume has gone down.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, the revenues have been declining. Okay, so I think if the volume is going up, as you said, that means it must be something related to the pricing. Maybe the price of the tickets are going down because the customers are willing to pay less, and maybe the numbers, and yeah, maybe the willingness to pay has gone down. So the pricing has gone down. So do we have any information regarding the pricing of the tickets?
So we have some information regarding price, and I'll be sharing my screen for everyone who's listening on audio. So definitely check out the graphs over here. Can you see this, or should I try to zoom out a bit?
No, I think, yeah, it's okay. Okay, so we can see the average price paid by venue type at client and competitors. Okay, so we have two large venues and 3 small venues. And it seems that our client is like priced very low. For example, in the large venue, I'm seeing that our client ticket price is on an average $48, whereas the company A has the highest price of $277. And in the next large venue, our client ticket price is $38, whereas the maximum in that segment is $143. Similarly, in the small venues also, the ticket price of a client is on the lower side. From this, I'm assuming that the client A only has large venues. The company A only has large venues. It doesn't have small venues. And even if I compare it to C and D, I think our price is very low. So like $33, $15, whereas the other players in the market, they are charging way much. So I'm guessing like we are not promoting to the big, we are not a luxury end or a premium opera. So I'm guessing that we're a kind of low end opera. Maybe we are offering limited facilities to customers, the seating, the auditorium, the sound arrangements, and maybe we are not attracting talented musicians, talented performers. Maybe that's the reason we are not able to price our tickets, and that could be a reason. Yeah.
So just in terms of, our overall opera, we are a pretty renowned opera overall. So it's not necessarily that the quality of our venue or our performers are necessarily less than our competitors.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want to understand that why we have not been able to increase the ticket price as per the other players in the industry. Like, is there anything that is holding us back? For example, we are in a low income neighborhood. Maybe people are not willing to shell that much amount of money. And is there any data regarding how many theaters does our client have? Is it just one, or we have many throughout Paris?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that last question?
So I just want to understand that how many theaters does our client have in Paris?
So these different venues are the different venues that, our client also has. So we can assume it's about 5. But in terms of location, we're not necessarily in a low income neighborhood either.
Okay. So I'm just trying to think why will the pricing level be at the point that it currently is? So
this is the average price. So I guess, let's think about it for a reason. Let's brainstorm some of the different, ways you could increase the overall average price.
Okay. So one of the ways we can improve the ticket price is by one of the ways could be like attracting higher quality talents. For example, if we are getting renowned musicians, renowned performers, so I think that could, because since they will command a higher price, so automatically the ticket price will also go up. And also people are maybe they will be willing to shell that extra amount for getting a high quality performance.
Okay.
So that could be one of the things. And other thing could be like value added services that we could offer apart from the main performance. For example, if there are fooding and beverage options, if the luxury sitting options, for example, if we have recliner seats, if we have like cafes inside the venue where people can get coffee, people can get snacks. I think those are the kind of things that can, like boost.
So
the
I think
ticket
those are
prices.
great. I think those are great additional revenue opportunities that you're talking about right now. But I guess in terms of price, right now we're looking at the average price, right? So the average is a cumulative. So what are some tactics that, you may have seen other types of venues? So, even if I think about, other venues, what are some tactics that they may try to employ?
Okay, so I think one could be like differential pricing. For example, if we have categories of seats, for example, luxury seats, mid-tier seats, and also like regarding in terms of the placement in the auditorium. For example, if you have a better view in the balcony, if you have a better view at the front, so you could have differential pricing for that.
Yeah.
Another thing could be like if we can do dynamic pricing. For example, if we are booking the tickets in advance, that could cost less. The more we book the tickets towards as the event approaches, the prices could increase. So that is one. Instead of having a flat kind of fee, we could explore the differential pricing. And in terms of other areas, I think just we have to promote ourselves as a brand. Like maybe we are a good company, but maybe we are not promoting ourselves that much. So maybe we have to promote in a big way, go for aggressive marketing and promotional campaigns, and so to create a perception in the mind of the audience that we are a big brand. So I think that can boost your prices, and you can bring in an aura of exclusivity in the marketing campaigns.
Yeah. So actually, in speaking of differentiating prices, we have differentiation of the current differentiation of seating by venue location between us and our competitors.
So it is a differential pricing with respect to the venues.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm assuming. Like I can see the large venues have higher average ticket price. For example, we have 48 and 38, and that goes down in the small venues. So is it that what you're referring to, or?
No. So this is essentially. Do you see the legend on the corner?
The legend at the corner. Can you please repeat?
Let me. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I think it was frozen. Sorry about that. That was my bad.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm seeing it right now. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I didn't see this before. Okay. So let me just go to differentiation of seating by venue location. Okay. So our client has 4 seat types. Let me just try to understand what the graph is all about. So okay. So just want to clarify something, like the YOLO legend refers to 4+ seat types. So what does exactly that mean? So does that mean that we have more than 4 categories of seat in each venue that A operates?
Yeah. So essentially this is, depending on the different venues, like how many different types of seats do you offer? Do you offer just like one general admission?
Okay.
Do you offer like one floor, one, mezzanine or whatever? Or do you offer, tiers and such?
Okay. So I think one of the things that if I look at players A and C, I think they have 4+ seat types in the majority of the venues. Whereas a client, it is kind of very fragmented thing. For example, like, and I'm assuming this is percentage. Yeah, this is percentage. So I'm assuming, for example, in a client, only 38% of the venues have 4+ seat types. Whereas like a huge part, like considerable 45% of our clients' seating arrangements have only 1 or 2 seat types. So given this data, I feel that one of the things we could do is to introduce different seat types in all the venues. and not just like one or two of the venues. So one of the first things to ensure is that we have various categories of seats in each of the venues that we are operating, and that will allow us to like price the different segments, and then that can allow us to gain greater revenues. That is the initial impression that I have. And is there anything that I can take forward from this?
No, I think that's a good, approach to just kind of, look at differentiating prices. And one area that we were really looking at was sort of the different types of prices that we have for tickets. So we have information for you here as well.
Okay. So I'm looking at this exhibit. So this shows the ticket pricing structure, the available prices as a percentage of the average price. Okay. So for our client, the most expensive seats are 136% of the average. And then it goes down by 99%, 85%, 61%, so on. Whereas our competitors, if we look at the next 3 tiers, that is second most expensive, third most expensive, and the cheapest, the percentages are roughly the same, but the main difference is the most expensive pricing. For example, for our competitors, for the most expensive category, that is 316% of the average. That is more than 3 times of the average price. Whereas for our client, that is only 1.36 times the average price. So I'm guessing that the main thing that is happening here is that we are not able to fully leverage the most expensive category. I think there is a scope for increasing the price of that segment. And I think that is the area where we are lagging behind. So I think this is the problem.
Yeah. So that's a great area to look at. So 1 sec. Sorry about that. So, to improve profits, one option could be to increase it, as you're right. So let's assume the following right now. 50 million we currently make 50 million in revenue, and we have a 30% profit margin. The current price of the tickets is 150 for the high-end tickets, and they comprise 10% of the overall revenue. We're proposing doubling the high-end price to $300 per ticket, and want to know what kind of impact this price raise could have on our overall profitability.
Okay, so I'll just repeat what you just said. So we have a $50 million revenue and a profit margin of 30%. So our high-end ticket is currently priced $150, and it comprises 10% of the overall revenue, and we are considering increasing the price of the high-end to $300 per ticket. So we have to calculate the profit margin for the new scenario.
Yeah, and just to be clear, to make sure I heard you correctly, the current profit margin is 30%, not 20.
30%, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I said 30. Okay, I said 30.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So let me just walk you through the calculations as I do it. So we have $50 million revenues. Okay, and the profit margin is 30%. So if I calculate the profit in absolute terms, it is 30% of $50 million. So which is $15 million. So that is the current profit that we have. And the high-end tickets is 10% of the revenue. So the high-end ticket revenue is $5 million. And we are pricing the high-end tickets at $150. So we are looking to increase it to $300. In that case, the revenues from high-end tickets would become $10 million. And if I look at the revenue other than the high-end ticket, so that would be 50 million minus 5 million, which is 45 million. It is the revenues other than the high-end tickets. That is 50 minus 5, 45.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. So now our new revenues comes to $55 million. If I double the price of the high-end tickets. And assuming that the 30% profit margin remains the same, so the new profit should be, okay, so we have to calculate the profit margin, did you say?
Yeah. So we're just taking a look at the impact on overall profitability. And I want to ask you a question because, the old profit margin was 30%, but we changed the lever that affects profitability. So, we wouldn't necessarily have 30% profit margin anymore, would we?
No, I think the profit margin is going to, it's going to get affected because the profit margin from the high-end tickets will not remain, like it will increase.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So instead of doing that calculation, what I was asking you is the impact on profit margin. Yes?
Okay.
Or sorry, not profit margin, overall profitability. I apologize.
Overall profitability. Okay. So let me just do, so initial profit was $15 million. Okay, let me just start from there. And the high-end ticket revenue is $5 million, which has increased to $10 million. Okay. So if I assume that in the initial scenario, I want to calculate the profit from the high-end tickets. So in the initial scenario, the profit margin was 30%. So we were earning a profit of like 30% of 5 million, which is $0.15 million. So that was
to backtrack, I just want to know if we increase the high-end ticket prices, what would be sort of the impact on our overall profitability as an opera?
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out the calculation to make it more refined. Okay, so let me just give it a thought. So it's I just want to know that I want to focus on the increased portion of the revenue. So I just want to know that how to calculate the profits from there.
So I guess let's backtrack for a second. I guess I just want to know, hey, overall, how much would my profits increase if I doubled my high-end revenue?
Okay. I'll do it. I'll do it. So 5 minus 1.15, it is. So I think I just like to walk through the calculation. So 30% of 5. So I'm trying to calculate the profit. Okay. So I think the increased profit would be the increased revenue, that is $5 million, because the costs are remaining the same, whereas we are getting an additional $5 million revenue. So I think the profitability is also increasing by $5 million. So we are increasing profits by $5 million. And so our initial profits were 15 million. So now it becomes 20 million. And this 20 is out of a revenue of 50. So sorry, it's 40%. It's 40% profit that we are.
How much of an increase in profitability are we seeing?
So we are increasing, we are seeing an increase of 10% profit. So which is, I think, a very sizable, sizable portion, because $5 million is not a small figure. But I'd like to know, it is a good profit margin, but then I'd like to know whether this is sufficient or.
Well, how much, because I guess I didn't ask what the increase in profit margin is. What's the increase in our overall profitability?
It's a 10% increase in profitability, like in terms of the margin, or in terms
I'm asking
of the
not the margin. I'm not asking margin. I'm asking overall profitability, as in numerical terms. How much was that increase?
Okay, so that increase was $5 million. So initially we had $15 million, which has increased to $20 million.
So how much of a percentage increase is that?
So, okay. So that is actually, okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
I was not getting sure. Okay. So it's actually like 1/3. So 33% increase in profits that we are having. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
So I think 33% is a very good figure because like just by differential pricing, if by pulling this lever, we are able to get a 33% increase, it's really good. But at the same time, I'd like to take this with a pinch of salt because I do not know what the competitive response would be if I increase my prices. For example, in this case, we are assuming that there will be no decline in revenues because we are not going to lose any customers. So that may not be a valid assumption. If we increase our prices, we might lose the attendance, and that can actually lower the revenues. And I also want to know, whether after the increase in profit, is it in line with our expectations, and does this actually solve our purpose? But I'm encouraged by this figure. It's a very good figure.
Yeah, I think it is. And, as of right now, it looks like the CEO is eager to join the line and hear your thoughts.
Okay. We have analyzed the market of operas in Paris, and we have investigated the causes behind the decline in profitability. And one of the things that we came up with is the differential pricing, and we are not able to increase our price level for the premium segment of the seats is not very high compared to the industry standards. So we see a lot of potential there, and by doubling the ticket price from $150 to $300 for the high-end tickets, our profits are going to increase by 33% from $15 million to $20 million. So this is increasing the price of the high-end tickets is one thing we should do. However, there are risks that it might not play out like this. Because of the increase in price, we could lose customers if they want to switch to other opera houses offering similar facilities as ours. So we should investigate the impact of that before actually making a move. For the next steps, I would recommend doing a thorough due diligence of the market, build a risk mitigation plan, and then design a go-to-market strategy with improved brand image, which will attract the customers to our new pricing model and to our latest offerings.
All right, great. So we're done. You can take a breath now.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess, before I jump into feedback, I want to get your overall perception of, what do you think went well? What do you feel like, were areas of improvement? What are you proud of and such?
Okay. So, one thing that I tend to struggle with, and I think I did also in this instance, is that I came up with a broad structure. I think if the structure would have been more focused, I think it would have helped. So I think there is a scope for improvement in the structure. And other thing is that the math was not too difficult. It was easy, but I somehow sort of was starting to make it more complicated than necessary. So the profitability was fairly straightforward thing, but I should have got it earlier, I believe. So that is one thing. In terms of brainstorming ideas, I think that was good because I was able to take this differential pricing into account before the exhibits actually came up. So I think I did that well. And the recommendation, I'm curious to listen from you, like whether my recommendation was good or whether there is scope for improvement in that. But I just feel that the overall case was good. But yeah, I think I should have done the math part earlier.
Yeah. So, overall, I would say, there are a lot of really great things happening. So I kind of want to start with the stuff that's going really well. And I think actually what I'm going to do is let's walk through the case again, from the beginning portion to, the end and just kind of go chronologically right now. So in terms of, I thought the recap was good and whatnot. I think one thing that, is a big problem for a lot of people is asking, knowing like what's a data question, what types of questions to ask, right? And, asking because you weren't given any numbers. If I told you our profitability goal was 500 million or 600 or 700 million, a question I ask myself is, if I know that exact numerical number, will it change my structure? Probably not, right? Depending 500 or 700, it's not going to really do anything for my structure. So then I kind of know like, hey, this is a data question. If it comes up within the case, I think it's great. If they gave you a starting number and you wanted to know exactly how much we're trying to increase, that would be helpful. But, as of right now, because you weren't necessarily given any numbers, then you kind of know like, hey, I'm not really going to be calculating an exact increase. It's just, hey, our funding is going down and we need to find ways to increase it overall. So I think that's how we can kind of tell. And, I'm glad we did this case because you didn't have familiarity with the subject area. And I think it can happen with a lot, right? Because, one thing is that I don't think we're necessarily expected to be on the job too. Consultants aren't expected to be walking encyclopedias, but we need to be expert Googlers in a way, right? Like we need to know how to find information and we need to know what information we need to know. So you don't know much about the opera market. Not a problem to ask up front, say, I'm not too familiar with this market. So, bear with me. I may need to ask a couple questions to fully understand what's going on. And I think halfway through the case, I think when I said, think about other venues, think about what they're doing, I think it finally clicked for you there. Like there was a moment where you're like, yes. And the motor started turning in the direction of like ticket venues and, concert halls and things like that I think started clicking when I said something like that. Right. And so that's why, very early on in the case, I think something you can do is, focus on, what's it called? Trying to find a type of venue or a type of business model that is similar. One thing that happened is, you asked me a lot about the business model. Something I like doing instead is giving the assumption of what the business model is and having the interviewer confirm or deny it. Because I'm not sure, did you have any idea of like, hey, this is the business model. I have any idea of what this is, or this could be this or this. Sometimes asking yourself and making you think about, hey, what this business model could be before, asking the interviewer will allow your brain to actually have to think before you jump into the framework. And I think that's a really great tactic to use to start getting your brain to think about, how could I envision this business? If I said something like, and I'm not sure what concert halls you're familiar with, I could think of, Madison Square Garden. I could even think of sports venues, right? Staples Center or whatever like that. How do I think of different venues and try to put that in my mind of, wherever you are. And that's a great way of being like, so, I'm over here and, there's this concert hall that I've seen, or, I always go to concerts in this place. Can I think about it like a similar model where it's like kind of a theater, a couple different venues that you could go into, I pay my ticket price, I go, I see the show. And that's pretty much the business model. And I'd say, yeah, that's pretty much it. It gives you a visualization of what's going on, and that will help kind of be like, okay, yeah, like I can kind of visualize and be more specific upfront and know what's going on. So I think that was probably one of the biggest things. I'm glad you asked about profitability. I think getting clear on the situation, because it was a little murky, would have been also helpful of going, so did we lose profit? Do we lose this funding right now? How much are we dependent on this funding? Or, has this happened yet? Do we expect it to happen? And I can say, oh, we don't know, but, I kind of gave you that information later on. Just being clear about the scenario, because if we're not clear about the scenario in our head, sometimes it becomes a little murky in the case. So just asking a couple questions around that, I think would have been beneficial questions for you to sort of know what we're doing and knowing like, okay, so our measure of success today is to try to increase overall profitability to kind of cushion that potential loss in funding that's, giving us a little bit of a boost that we need. Yep. Great. So if that's clear, I'm going to, give me 1 second. So I was timing the structure and presentation. So in terms of timing for structure, you're pretty much on point. You were at 2 minutes and 2 seconds. So in terms of timing of, hey, what this 2 minutes feels like, you got a pretty good gauge of that. Presentation was about 3 minutes and 55 seconds. So it was extensively over. I think one of those things that you were saying is I wasn't fully clear, and sometimes we over talk to kind of make up for the fact that we're not fully clear on what we're talking about. In terms of the structure itself, I would agree that I think we could have been more specific. And I think having that information up front would have helped a lot. But I think for a profitability case, because the main goal was increased profitability, first, make sure you're fully clear on the client's objective. And if it's a profitability case, I would focus more of my buckets and more of the weight in the case around the profitability components compared to looking at other stuff. One of the things that you talked about was revenue growth in the framework. And I just want to urge you like, hey, this is very chronological. Right now, we know we have a profitability problem. We don't know whether the lever that we're going to pull is on the revenue side or the cost side. So having a full bucket dedicated to revenue growth may be a little premature, right? Because then it's like, if this became a variable cost problem and all we were doing is scaling revenue, then all of a sudden we may have scaled our profitability problem overall. So that's just one caveat to like kind of look out for, is that you want to focus most of your attention on breaking down the components of revenue. So you might have one on the overall revenue of the company. You might have one on fixed cost, variable cost. And I'd urge you to be a bit more specific, because those were very general, right? And I think knowing that, like, for me, if I think about a music venue and I think about any type of music venue I've seen, one of the biggest fixed costs that you didn't mention was probably rent, right? It's probably rent is one of their biggest expenses, compared to a lot of stuff. So that was when I was like, that's a really easy one to go like, this is something I should mention. In terms of revenues, I think it kind of was a little bit convoluted with the client stuff, because you talked a bit about the different types of revenues we could receive, the different types of ticketing and such. And I would just urge you to kind of include that in the revenue. Like, I want to know a breakdown of revenue, ideally by, price and volume. I know we have a couple different venues. So maybe let's understand, what our sales have been throughout the different venues, as well as, the different types of concerts, the types of events we've been throwing, what are giving us more sales, what's giving us less, and kind of understand where we might be able to at least start to break down, like, this is really where we're making our money compared to other ones that may not be funding us as much.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And, that's what I would kind of do to kind of, overall increase it. And then, in terms of, I thought the graphs, something that you were doing really, really well is you were really just reading graphs, right? You're reading the graphs. You're fully understanding what's going on with the graphs. And, you're telling me what you're thinking, which is really important. I think a lot of people miss is like, hey, this is my insight. This is what I see. And this is what it means. This is how I frame it back into the context of the case. This is what I'd want to do with that information, which I think is very important, that a lot of times people may just read the graph and not know what to do with it moving forward. So that's something you're doing really well. I think, by the math portion, nerves can have an impact on this, because one of the things was I was saying profits. Overall profitability, you were focused on profit margin, and something that happens, and this is nerves kicking in, because I can tell when you're not fully listening to me, you kind of stay on the same one. And I'm like, no, overall profitability, because you're right. The math wasn't hard. You knew what to do. It just took me a couple times of repetition to get you there. So that's something that I would want you to sort of work on. And we don't have time to get into it right now, but I do have a lot of tips of just, even like, grounding yourself and such before you jump into a high pressure environment. And it's great that you did jump into a high pressure environment to know, hey, halfway through, I may not fully be paying attention. So sometimes it's just taking a step back, taking a breath, being like, so I guess what you're telling me to do is, instead of just kind of jumping into it and being like, no, that's not exactly it. No, that's not exactly it. No, I don't know if that's exactly it. Just being like, okay, so if I take a step back, what we're really looking for, and frame it for me conceptually, because clearly there was a misunderstanding between us, right? So one thing you can do is, instead of kind of trying to see what sticks, just take a step back, be like, okay, so to make sure I understand you correctly, what you're asking from me is, and have the interviewer confirm or deny. So conceptually, you understand what's going on, because, after once or twice where you're like, I'm just not getting what they're saying, take a step back, try to put into your own words and see what the interviewer is going to say. And, I know I need to wrap up in just a second over here. So I see Japeth waiting for me. But, in terms of the recommendation, one thing that I would, switch is, you kind of walked me through your process compared to giving me the answer. And that's what we want to switch. And it's very, different a lot from school, where we were walked, tell me what you did. Instead of giving me a report, I just want the answers. So what I would start off with is the overall objective. So, hi, Mr. CEO. I know we were brought in today to see ways we can increase profitability. And one major area where we can focus on is increasing the prices of our high-end tickets, particularly doubling those prices. We believe these for a couple of reasons, right? We're significantly lower. We have opportunity to differentiate, etc. So that's really the answer we came to at the end. And sort of the stuff that we found before was the reasoning, right? Like, our prices are significantly lower than our competitors, especially in that region, etc. So that's something that I would really focus on, and make sure one of your next steps has something to do with the recommendation you gave. Because we talked about increasing ticket prices. Maybe we start with a roll-up program, try a pilot of sorts. So just make sure you mention in what your recommendation was, one of your next steps should be at least one of your next steps should be related to the exact recommendation you gave, because that is really the continuation of the strategy we're going to employ.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was a great experience.
Okay. Awesome. Glad to hear.